Hello, everyone. This is Manolo Concepcion. I am the new associate head coach at Eastern Illinois University here in the United States of America. I am born and raised in Puerto Rico, where I had the opportunity to play and coach. Later relocated to the U.S., where I have been a junior college coach and also NCAA Division I coach. When this crisis began, I wanted to create an educational tool for all of us coaches, players, fans around the world to be able to unify philosophies by listening to others throughout their backgrounds and experiences. It's been, 2.5, 3 months already, and we continue to be able to bring great guests that we can learn from. Today, we have someone in the program that not just him, but all his family represents one of the biggest and most influential movements in volleyball in the Midwest and all United States. And this is Mr. Dave Shondell. How are you, sir?
Hey, great, Manolo. It's a privilege to be on the show. And what a great job you've done in helping keep people entertained and educated during this COVID-19 crisis. It's been the best thing going. So on behalf of a lot of volleyball coaches and a lot of volleyball fans, thank you very much for all you're doing.
Thank you so much for those words, Dave. And I want to ask you, from your perspective, what have you seen in common throughout the presentations that might have surprised you? Listening from even international coaches to American coaches, is there anything that captures your attention about it?
I just think the incredible passion and focus that your coaches have. Everybody does things different. Just yesterday I was listening to Jimmy Mack on your broadcast, and maybe one of the best, if not the best, coach in the history of USA. I mean, he's that good, and he goes about doing things a certain way, and it doesn't mean that's the way everyone else needs to do them. You'll find some things that you really like that Jim does. And there's some things that Jim does that just don't suit the way that maybe I or you or other people, feel like it's going to be best for them. And I think that's the one thing, is that everybody is different, and all your guests have different. But at the end of the day, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, as we go on, it's so much just about the amount of time you want to put into it, and the ability to build relationships and create a culture. And I think the common theme is culture nowadays. And, but I'm just amazed at the job that you're doing. I mean, it's one thing to have the connections and be able to get all these guests to come on, but to do the research that you have done and spend the time to get ready for each guest and hit the things that you want to hit to bring out the reply and the response that you're getting, it has been really, really outstanding.
Thank you so much for those words. This is Dave Shondell again, the Purdue University head coach. He's been there forever, but more than that, also he has been, along with his family, has been an institution for what volleyball represents here in the Midwest. Dave, many people want to know, how is your dad doing? Is he getting better? Is he in good shape? What can you tell us about his status right now?
Yeah, thanks so much, Manolo, for asking that question. But Dad right now is doing pretty good. He's in an assisted living place right in Muncie. About a year ago, Dad broke his hip, and that kind of started things spiraling a little bit in the wrong direction. But for a guy at 90 years old to break his hip, it's not a good thing. And but he got taken care of, and he's still not walking at ease. He still uses a walker. He wants to walk without one, but the nurses reprimand him whenever he is out in the hallway trying to walk without a walker, because he's not quite ready for it yet. About a month ago, he was taken to the hospital because he was dehydrated and had a really bad urinary tract infection. And when you get to be that age, a doctor friend told me that a urinary tract infection can just zap the life out of you. So he looked a little bit lifeless and unresponsive, and they felt like it might be something worse. And so they took him into the local Ball Memorial Hospital. It's actually called Indiana Health. Indiana University Health, but I can't really say Indiana University Health being from Purdue. So I still call it Ball Memorial Hospital, which is what was called when I was back in Muncie. So, but the good news is he's doing well. Our family has a biweekly Zoom call with him because these assisted living places. Nobody can come in, nobody can go out, and
Wow.
it's tough for a guy 91 just to be in his own room
Man.
24 hours a day, with the exception of nurses coming in to check on him. So I think all of us need to be aware of that that's the state of affairs that all of those retirement homes and nursing homes are in right now, is that if you know somebody that might be in there, write them a letter or find a way to reach out to them, because they're getting awfully lonely.
You're so right. It's that concept of isolation, especially at that age where everyone needs even more company and more people around them and more direct contact. And now, being through this situation, it's not the same, going through Zoom or seeing it from a window than actually being there for them. And for someone like your dad that has been involved around everyone forever, that's his thing. And I want to give everyone an example, by the way, for the people that are watching outside of the US. I invite you to Google just that last name, Shondell, and you're going to understand how much that name means in the United States of America for volleyball. But 3 years ago, I was in a Ball State tournament, and I was kind of like taking the match that we had played back, and then there comes this 80-something-year-old guy at that point and tells me, "Hey, I don't know you, but you're doing a good job with that program. Be patient because things are gonna continue to get better."
Yeah,
man, and that's the first conversation I ever had with Mr. Shondell. It took me so much time, and I even played against Ball State as a player, and I never got the opportunity to actually meet him, but those words of wisdom just gave me a second air, just gave me hope to understand that programs take time, rebuilding takes time, and it's all about just the continuity that we provide to that. And, that was some of his advice that he gave me in that small talk, small conversation. But that's the type of person that not just he is, but everyone in your family, Dave.
Well, certainly you got a good taste of my dad. That sounds just like him. Even he would have probably been about 88 years old that day that you met him. And he's just a real positive guy. And I like to think that, all of the coaches that come out of our family and most of the coaches that come out of the Ball State family tree, have done that because they've been educated as teachers. Ball State University initially was a teacher's college. And so when you go back and you look at some of the guys that came out early, a couple of names that people will recognize, Mick Haley and Arnie Ball. Those were two of the pioneers that helped my dad get that program started back in the early 60s. And they've gone on, obviously, and have had great success as coaches. Both have coached at high level collegiately and internationally, and we're really good players.
Legends.
As well. But a lot of people don't know the history of Ball State, how a school in Muncie, Indiana, became the first or second Division I men's volleyball program in the country. I mean, Ball State and UCLA.
In the middle of cornfields. In the middle of cornfields, Dave. How does that happen?
Well, that's all Dr. Don. Dr. Don Shondell was brought back to Ball State to run the intramural program. He was very active as a student at Ball State in refereeing and supervising what was going on in intramurals. Okay. He also played on the club men's volleyball team. So back in the 50s, there was actually late 40s. He was born in 29. So in 48, 49, and 50, they actually had volleyball for men. And it was a different kind of game than it is right now. But he played club, and then he graduated from Ball State. He got he went into the Army, and during the Korean War, when that was done, he took a teaching job up in Brooke, Indiana, not too far from West Lafayette. And He taught and coached different sports there for probably 4, maybe 5 years. And then Ball State called and asked if he would come back and run the intramural program. And after about 6 months, they asked him, Bob McCall, who was the director of the intramurals and was big in the sports athletic department, asked him to take over the men's club program. And the one thing about Dr. Don is he's a visionary. And he just didn't want to coach a men's club program. He didn't know why men playing volleyball couldn't have what basketball and football and track and field and baseball and soccer and wrestling had. And so he started quite a war with the athletic department in getting men's volleyball started. And there were some people that fought against him. But at the end of the day, after this year-long battle, all of the people on this coaching staff voted. And they voted in favor by 1 vote to have men's volleyball at Ball State University, and the rest is history. But that was just because Dad was very determined and did a lot of politicking with the other coaches, and
a lot of lobbying.
Yeah, right. They tossed him a bone, and Ball State has had great success in the sport ever since.
That's awesome. Hey, Dave, and before we actually dig deep into Muncie and then, of course, your school, but I really want to ask you about the current situation going on, not just in the U.S., but around the world. In the U.S., it has been for more than 200 years, but around the world, for example, in my island of Puerto Rico, it's been around more than almost 600 years. Right. And it's the issue of discrimination. And I wanted to ask you, number one, how are you dealing with this, with your team, in matters of diversity and inclusion, and then also any words of wisdom that you have about, us, how to deal with this situation, how to be better to others?
Yeah, great question at a time where I think that people are beginning to see the light a little bit. In our country, it's amazing the response to the debacle up in Minneapolis, the tragedy in Minneapolis, which seems like about 10, 11 days ago. The protests, marches, the people becoming outspoken. I think America has finally said enough is enough. And so I think there are some positives that are coming about. My history, Manolo, is kind of starts back when I was in high school. My sister, who was a year older than me, dated a lot of African-American men. And at a time when that was not the popular thing in society. And so, I watched that take place, and our family was supportive. And eventually she married a black man, C.C. Fullove, who played basketball at Ball State, went on to coach at IPFW, and is now an administrator in Fort Wayne Community Schools. Great guy, just about my age. And she had 4 daughters. We talked about that a little bit.
This is, to put it in perspective for a minute, for the people watching outside of the U.S., this part of the United States where Dave is describing is predominantly white. And for this to happen, for example, my former boss in Evansville told me that he never saw an African American until he actually moved from upstate Indiana. So, I mean, it's a big deal what you're actually what you're telling us a story about. Please continue.
Yeah, and so it was a very quiet wedding. Matter of fact, my sister and her husband just pretty much eloped. They went up to a pastor that used to be a pastor at our church that was very well liked, and they had their wedding, and then eventually had 4 daughters that were biracial, and all 4 of them played Division I volleyball. So our volley junkies should be happy to know that. Jasmine Fullove played at Tennessee, went to the Final Four with Rob Patrick. Gentry Fullove played at Morgan State out in Baltimore, and Jacqueline Fullove played at Ball State, and Jordan Fullove played here at Purdue for a couple of years. Now she's a pharmacist, but it was one of those things that I became exposed, and the experience of that was uncomfortable. At times my sister was uncomfortable, even though my parents thought everybody was equal, but it was still uncomfortable. But
Wow.
my sister felt strongly enough about it, and that was the direction she was going to go, and it's just worked out, great. Nowadays it's not quite like that. My daughter Lindsay, who I think has been in coaching at different places, and now is basically a stay-at-home mom. She married a black man, Tamir Morgan. We call Tamir Tamiracle because he's such a great guy that he came in and took my daughter, who was a little bit confused at times on what direction she wanted to go, and changed her life. He's a great Christian young man and has been just a tremendous addition to our family. She has 3 sons and a daughter that certainly are of color. And so I'm certainly invested in this, maybe more than the average white man. And our team, without me having to get involved whatsoever, our team is also 100% invested. They've been on social media very assertively, speaking their minds about that it's time for this to end, and that they're going to be involved in whatever it takes. They're going to stand behind Black lives. And it's just long overdue, Manolo. It is so long overdue. And
How did you create that, Dave? How did you create an environment in your team that they feel that Coach Shondell is going to support me, especially throughout this time? So you, as a white man coaching women in the NCAA, like what are the keys that you provided for that?
Well, patience, understanding. The most important thing in coaching is building relationships. Any coach that's been successful will tell you that. They're not going to be successful in any facet if they don't first build the relationships. It's one of the reasons, Manolo, when I recruit, I might get a commitment from a player when she's a sophomore. Probably won't happen anymore because of the rule change. But we used to get commitments from kids when they were sophomores. I would be on those kids' courts all the time during recruiting, even though they had committed, because I wanted them to know how important that they were to me. And I wanted to watch them and learn and understand who they were. So when they got to Purdue, we weren't starting from scratch, that we already had that relationship. There were phone calls, there were texts. I was watching them during the high school season. I would continue to build that relationship. And so I think our players understand that I'm going to give them the freedom to do what they think is right. And I think because of my history, they know how I feel about racial equality. It's something that is, like I mentioned, is long past due. And I think all of us, there's a faction in this country that's not going to buy in the way that I'm going to, or you're going to, or our team is going to. But when you look at those protests across America, or Philadelphia, the crowd they had out in Philly the past few days, but there are more white people than there are black people.
True.
That way from the cameras, and I think that's phenomenal. And I'm a white guy. I've been entitled. Things have been easy for me in this country because it's been a white country, and I know that. I absolutely know that. And then you talk about volleyball. Who's been more privileged than I have? I'm the son of Dr. Don Shondell. My older brother Steve was another one. He's also in the AVCA Hall of Fame, and I'm just kind of following along. So nothing's easy. Don't get me wrong. If you're coaching in the Big Ten, there's nothing easy about it. But I recognize that I'm a privileged white man, and it's time for privileged white men to stop and listen and learn and understand what's going on in this country. And one of the things I did, Manolo, was I called every black player that I've coached at Purdue.
Wow!
Out to them. This was probably last Thursday and Friday, because not only did I want to know how they were doing and let them know that I was here for them and I'm here to support them, and they were appreciative of that. But I wanted to understand how they feel. What's going on now that that it's come to the limelight again. How are they feeling, and what do I need to know so I can move forward and be more supportive on this issue? And I told some of them that our new Big Ten commissioner is starting a coalition to fight racism and hatred in this country, and certainly in our conference. And I've asked to be on that coalition because I don't want to just get on social media or get on a show like this and talk about it. more has to be done. And that's what I told our players on our Zoom call last week is don't just get on social media. That's a good start. It's showing people where you stand and that the Black community has your support. But what are we going to do in the fall?
Yes.
What are we going to do next fall? What's happening in your community? What's going to happen in our community? How are we going to embrace and help the Black community understand that we do care and we do want equality? So,
and I think that this is not just about discrimination, but also it's about teaching the student athletes how to take a stand for what they believe, how to not look at life from the stands, how to actually be part of the change, whatever change that might be. And in this case, is discrimination. And sometimes equality is not enough. Sometimes we need equity. Mm-hmm. And equity is very different from equality. We need to provide the same resources that will be enough for each population to be equally successful, or at least have the same opportunities to be successful. So sometimes when we think about equality is like this. Sometimes equity might look like this in order to create an environment ideal for different communities to be part of the conversation, part of the decision making, part of the change. So I appreciate you, Coach, talking about this matter, because people like you being upfront and sincere about how you feel about this is part of that change. So thank you, Dave, for that. And for everyone out there, continue to try to make a change, continue to try to take a stand, whatever that might be. Please do it. Okay, so now let's talk about volleyball, Dave. Muncie, we talk about Ball State, but Muncie, if I think about it, I think volleyball immediately. What makes volleyball and sports in general so successful in that area? And is it something that is being emphasized since younger ages? Because the motor skill development that I see from that area, along with the competitiveness of those prospects, coming from that area, it's just almost incomparable with any other part in the U.S. So what is it that it has?
Great people in Muncie, Delaware County. And again, it started with Dr. Don, mm-hmm. Who was, when Dr. Don was at Ball State, he just didn't coach. He was teaching a full load. He was in the teachers department, in the PE department. So he taught, and that's where he found most of his volleyball players. Back in the 60s and 70s, he was finding guys in his PE class and putting them on the volleyball team. So, but basically, so many people came out of the Ball State University, whether they were players on the team or whether they were teachers going out to begin their craft on high schools and middle schools. And many of them stayed local. My brother Steve, Wes Lyon, Mike Lingenfelter, myself, Jim Craig, who was a band director at Wapahani and turned into one of the greatest coaches that club volleyball has ever seen, won a variety of national championships. But these people all came out of Ball State University, and they were destined to teach, but they had this passion for volleyball. And what was different, Manolo, about, I think, Delaware County and the culture that was created there, and I'll get back to the history of it in a minute, the high school coaches were coaching players from the other high schools. You couldn't coach your own kids back then. So you were going to better the players from other schools. So if Wes Lyon, who was at Muncie Southside, and if you don't know Wes Lyon, Wes is the longtime director of that club. Wes was a 4-time all MIVA player at Ball State, a science teacher while he's not doing all those things. He's recently retired. But he was coaching the 16s when he first started. So he was taking players from Burris, from Muncie Central, from Wapahani, from Westdell, from Delta, or all over East Central Indiana, and trained those players. And they'd come back and beat him when he was coaching high school at Muncie Southside. But we had a bunch of coaches that were like that. We didn't our objective was to make the area better in the sport of volleyball, to do something special. And there were some special characters, I think, that came out of that program. And then there's, you had the group that got it started, and then you had a group that came underneath that, guys like Kelly Sheffield that hot-footed up at Wisconsin, Kevin Lasso, who's a longtime assistant at Yale, Matt Affolter, who was a head coach at Dayton, and now he's down at Flagler, down in Florida. And now there's another group coming through. But it really started with my brother Steve back in like 1974. That was when Muncie Inter started. And he took a group from one high school and added a couple players to it and played out in the AAU Nationals out in Maryland one year. And then it just kind of went from there. But if people don't know Steve Shondell, who has won like 24 state championships at Burris and then high school, and then went to Ball State and won the MAC championship there, and recently retired. There's no better teacher in the game. And so we had these models like Steve and Wes Lyon that the rest of the coaches could look to figure out this is the way it can be done. And, I go across the country now, and when I go out to recruit at these major tournaments, I'm definitely watching athletes. That's my job. I've got to find athletes that can play in the Big Ten. But I get mesmerized by watching coaches. And so many people think that, all the great coaches are coaching at the college level. They couldn't be any more wrong. I mean, there are so many unbelievable coaches in volleyball and in high school volleyball that's just where they want to be. My brother Steve would tell you it was the biggest mistake he ever made was leaving Muncie Burris High School and going to Ball State. But yeah, here's a guy that's in the AVCA Hall of Fame. He's in the National High School Federation Hall of Fame. But he is just the best teacher of the game that I have ever seen.
Tell me,
yeah,
in that area, like, what are your biggest influencers from you growing up and wanting to become a teacher of the game yourself?
Well, starts with my dad and my brother, but Mick Haley was one of those guys. When I was 5 or 6 years old, he was starting his career playing. And so I got to know Mick Haley. I got to know Arnie Ball, Tom Bierman, Chris's dad, Chris Bierman, who coached at Pitt. Now he runs the Lexington United program. Those were guys that you can remember. My dad would take me on all those trips. Steve's 3 years older than I am, and we would jump in, whether it was the van or they used to take a big limo, a stretch limo they would take to different places. And I would go to Ohio State, to IPFW. Back then, they played a lot of their tournaments at YMCA's because there were so few college teams. So I went to Fort Wayne Y, the Dayton Y, and my dad would just turn me loose. So I was just running around back in the day. You could do that, and but there were so many guys that were tremendous players that also went on to coaching. But some were just great players that you just enjoyed to watch. But certainly my brother Steve and Wes Lyon were people in that area that I gained a lot of knowledge from, and have shaped my coaching from that area.
In what point do you feel that you went from learning to learn to learning to teach? What was that point in your career that you felt that, okay, I'm feeling more comfortable about what the message that I'm transmitting?
I'll tell you what, that doesn't stop. I mean, I think that
Yes.
there's not a coach in America right now that would tell you that they're done learning, or they had. But I think that probably my track was, I went to a small school, Daleville High School, that was right between Muncie and Anderson, small school that had no success in the sport, but it was the only job I could get. And so I went out there and taught elementary PE and coached 3 sports, and one was volleyball. And we quickly turned the program around there, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying to motivate kids, and my belief has always been play harder than anybody else on your schedule. You have to play harder.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to have less talent, you better play harder. And so that was the first thing we did, was that, and it doesn't take great skill to be great defensively. But we did have to teach, and we had to train. and we spent more time in the gym. And I had this role model, my older brother, Steve, who was building Burris into maybe the premier program in the state, if not the nation.
Mm-hmm.
I went over and watched their practices all the time. I watched my brother Steve train this group. And again, if you haven't seen him coach, you have no idea the patience, the breakdown he does, the fundamental techniques that he uses to train his kids. It's like he's teaching elementary PE, which is what he did, only he's doing that now with high school kids. And repetition was the key. And I wasn't exactly like Steve. I didn't have the patience that my brother Steve had to do it that way. I wanted to speed things up a little bit and push kids. But eventually, when I was at Daleville, I was still definitely learning. But when I went to Muncie Central about 8 years later, I stayed there for 13 years, and again helped generate a better program there. Then all of a sudden, I started studying the game a lot more and understanding what I was doing and how we were going to become the best program in the state was going to take a lot of effort. So I would say probably when I was in my 30s, when I finally probably realized that I need to do a lot more reading and I need to understand my players better and relate. I think that's the thing when you're young, you don't recognize the value of the relationship with players and what makes them go and what are you going to, you don't treat everybody the same. You're fair, but you don't treat everybody the same way. And so I think that's one thing that players appreciate is knowing that you've gotten to know them and you care enough about them that you're not going to treat each player the exact same way. You push on each kid to make them go.
It's undebatable the amount of success that your family has had, including you, in the high school level. Or for those high school coaches watching out there, aside from those trophies and wins, how you define yourself as a successful high school coach? What is your main job?
As a high school coach, your main job is to develop people. The same thing it is here. We talked 10 minutes ago about how I want our players to assert themselves in this in our country right now. Okay, there's nothing more important than that I'm going to teach them. I'm not teaching them how to run a slide right behind the setter is not more important than them getting in front of a camera and getting in front of people in our community and talk to them how they've got your back. We support you. That's more important. And so I think that empowering young women to believe in themselves and to assert themselves and to have confidence. And, in the Big Ten, we're dealing with a lot of women that are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". And what may or may not surprise people is a lot of women that size don't have confidence when they get to college. They just haven't because they've been taller than every boy in their high school. And that sometimes slows a little bit of their social growth. But I think it's really important that we empower our kids, no matter who they are, to be leaders, to take charge. And I think that's what good coaches do. And then they sit back and they watch.
When I see film or see you coach, two things stand for me. Your teams tend to play with supreme confidence, even under pressure. And the second thing is that they seem to be very competitive. No matter win or lose, the attitude that you have developed through your teams, that has been a consistency throughout your years at Purdue and probably when you were coaching in high school as well. So the first thing is, teaching players how to gain confidence. How do we create that culture inside of our programs? And the second thing is, at something as subjective as competitiveness, how do you teach it or embrace it?
Great questions, and I take that as a compliment. Thank you very much. When we first got to Purdue, I can remember meeting with our volleyball team, and it was funny. Purdue had struggled. Obviously, that's why they needed a coach. They had fired the previous coach, and Purdue had won 3 matches and lost 37 in the Big Ten play the 2 previous years. and they had kind of been floating around at the bottom of the Big Ten. I still thought it was a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I wasn't smart enough to know the challenges that were going to be ahead of me coming here. I just knew I wanted to coach Division I volleyball. I'd wanted that for a long time. And here was an opportunity that somebody was going to give me in the Big Ten to coach. And so I didn't realize how tough it was going to be. I didn't realize that, the Hugh McCutcheons and the Russ Rose and all the people, Jim Stones, that were going to be in the way. But and we had in a meeting we had, Manolo, with my team, is we came up with some ideas on how we could better ourselves. And we realized we weren't the most athletic team in the league, and we weren't going to be the most athletic team in the league in the near future, back in when I took the job in 2003. But I said, if we can outserve, out-defend, and out-pass, 3 skills that you don't have to touch 10'3" or 10'5", or you don't have to be 6'3" or 6'5". But
I love that, Dave. Like 3 skills that you have total control about. No excuses about, that you depending on the opponent.
So if we can out-serve, out-defend, and out-pass our opponents, we got a chance to win. It's like in Dumb and Dumber. We've got a chance. We have a chance to win. And so those are the 3 things that we built, and we continue to build our program on. But luckily, we've gotten a lot more athletic since then. But we are still going to serve, pass, and defend. Those are the 3 pillars of our program. And but I told them our goals this first year are going to be, when every match is over, we're going to know we played harder than the opponent. And when the opponent walks out the doors, they're going to be thinking, I can't believe that's the same team we saw a year ago. So we had to do something different. We had to be different. And I think that worked. I mean, I think that there were people that were surprised. I mean, we opened the Big Ten in that season, and we were 5-2 before one of our best players tore ACL. But we had beaten Minnesota before that year. We had beaten Chuck Irby at Michigan State, who was ranked 15th in the country. We went to Ohio State and beat them for the first time in, I think it was 15 years, at St. John Arena. And it was because they were reborn. Our players were reborn. They needed some new life. And we came in and we added some of that confidence to them. But confidence, it goes all back to the relationship that you build and being a positive coach. And I'm not as positive as my brother Steve. I'm not as positive as my brother John, who's my associate coach. But they constantly remind me, and they set that goal for me. And as I've gotten older, I've become more and more positive. People who were watching this show that watched me when I started coaching and was coaching high school and coaching club at Munciana would be shocked to think that I'm one of the most positive coaches.
Why is that, Dave?
Because why would they be surprised, or why am I more positive now?
Yeah, why would they be surprised?
Because I wasn't that way when I was coaching when I was younger. I was tough, and I demanded stuff. I would get on them. But again, I also knew enough back then to have relationships and the belief. And whenever a good coach goes over the line a little bit, they're smart enough to meet that person before the night is over and let them know, hey, that was my fault. Okay, this was what I was trying to do. But I apologize for that. That won't happen again. That might happen again, but I just think that what I've learned is that in today's day and age, positivity and calm is more important than negativity and being too excitable. And that's just my take.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing is, Dave, that, I mean, we grew that way and we grew up that way. I know that we are from, different generations, respectfully, but in the 80s and 90s, being coached by the baby booming generation, it was a task-oriented time, not just in sports, but in business and everything we did. Meaning that, you do this because I tell you to. There was not a generation of why. The why concept was taken as a questioning instead of actual something that you embrace. And I think those times have changed, as you said, and because of that, we have learned more about learning. We have learned more about how positivity increases that learning rate. And because of those aspects, I don't think that it makes wrong the way that things were. It just, we're just we did the best we could with the information that we had, and people responded to that at that point. But now, different generations, I think that we, a different culture, and volleyball is just a micro organization of what the culture represents. So, we're going to be the same way as the way that we are raised. In terms of you getting people on the same page and being so competitive, Dave, because it's just, it's almost in a good way. It's insane how competitive your teams are. They go after it. And if I'm watching your team, I'm not even thinking about your score. If I'm a fan, I'm thinking about, man, these people, make my money worth it coming to see them just because of how much they go after it.
Yeah. Well, that's just something you do every day. That's the tone that you set in practice. And, when I was in high school and even here at Purdue, we have drills that we start practices off to establish that early in the season. Defensive drills where we're gonna set the tone. And if you're a freshman that's just coming in, you've heard stories about things like this, okay, but you haven't experienced it. So you have to learn how to play with that tenacity and that intensity. And we're going to play harder than everybody in our league. Now that's hard. I mean, I would tell you right now, I think there are two teams that play harder than us right now, and we're gaining on them. But it's Penn State and it's been Wisconsin, okay? And that hurts for me to say that. But those coaches probably believe in the same thing, and they recruit players that are going to make that happen. But we cannot beat Wisconsin and Penn State if they're playing harder than we are every day. That has to change. And we all recruit great athletes. And they don't know what it takes to win in this league. This is the best volleyball conference for college athletes in the world, the Big Ten. And they're going to be great athletes. And we're not always going to have the best athletes in the league. We probably never will have the best athletes in the league.
Dave, for the people that are watching outside of the U.S., put being the best conference in the U.S. in perspective. What can you expect from your conference? Give me some maybe statistical trends that you can expect so people can have an idea.
Well, I think there were 15 players on the national team that played, this past summer. And I think of those 15 players on the national team, I think 12 were from the Big Ten Conference. All right? 12 athletes. So the top athletes in the world or in the country are playing in the Big Ten. That doesn't mean that there aren't that doesn't mean there aren't great athletes in other conferences that there are. But right now, and it's all this evolution you're talking about. How did the Midwest all of a sudden become the volleyball capital of the world? Okay, but I think that it has. It's moved from when we were younger. California ruled from the sands. Sand playing beach volleyball. And they just played more volleyball. They handled the ball more than anybody else. But that changed in these pockets like Lincoln, Nebraska, and like Austin, Texas, and Dallas, Texas, and all across the Midwest from Milwaukee. Well, Milwaukee Sting has such a great program up there, all the way down through Indianapolis and Chicago. Obviously, Chicago has had great club volleyball in Chicago, but that certainly has changed. But right now, I think the Big Ten Network has been great for our league. People see the Big Ten volleyball on TV all the time. They put more and more matches on every year because the fans love watching Big Ten volleyball. But I think that when you look at, Stanford obviously won the national championship this past year, and Stanford is certainly one of the top 3 programs in the country year in and year out. But then you start looking at a lot of Big Ten teams after that, including you got Texas and you've got Florida and some other people. But the Big Ten is really, really a tough league. And if you're going to sit back and think that because you're athletic, you're going to win, there's no way. And you're not going to outcoach people in our league either, Manolo. There's too many good coaches in our league. You're not going to outcoach them. You just hope that you're going to be able to compare with them when you get into there. Okay. And the key to being a really good coach is the amount of time you prepare. I think that we have the luxury of volley metrics, And Volumetrics is a video tool that every NCAA Division I university has now. And I can't even tell you how much video I watch to prepare for teams in the Big Ten. Probably more than I should. So much I probably confused. But there's no reason you can't out-prepare people. You can spend more time, and that's what we try to do here at Purdue.
Quick question as well. In terms of that, because your conference, there's so many different styles in one conference. And what attracts me the most about this conversation that we're going to have is that the most successful conference in the U.S. has many different coaching philosophies and coaching principles. And they're still able to succeed at the national level. Dave, you have a very particular coaching, philosophy and then principles. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I remember going to a coaching clinic back in when I first got started. It probably was 1980. Taras Liskevich was speaking, and one of the things he talked about was there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. And he's talking about exactly what your question is that there isn't one way to be successful. I think it starts with who you are. Jim McLaughlin is different than Russ Rose. Russ Rose is different than John Cook. John Cook's different than Mary Wise. And so I think, you embrace certain things that seem right to you, that make sense to you. I know that, Kevin Hamley and Jim McLaughlin and a lot of these people come from the Gold Medal Square operation. I couldn't even tell you what Gold Medal Square is. I know enough about it because I know I watched teams that had that philosophy. So I know what they like to do when I'm getting ready to play them. And there are certain ways that we have to things we have to be prepared for. And there are also some things that we think that we can exploit because of those principles that you're talking about. I think the principle that I have, and maybe a lot of the Ball State people have, is that we're going to train. That we're going to take athletes, and I can't get the same player day in and day out that Russ Rose or John Cook or now Kevin Hamley can get. Okay. But I can find the same athlete. Maybe he hasn't played nearly as much. Maybe she's somewhere that nobody has seen her. Okay. But I can find that same athlete. Annie Drews was not highly recruited. Okay?
That's so true. So true. Yes.
Annie Drews, who now is maybe the best opposite.
She is.
Certainly in the country, maybe one of the very best in the world, making
along with the Serbian lefty. Yes, I agree. Yes.
And she came down to us in Notre Dame. And luckily, she decided that, she wanted to come to Purdue. And when she got here, we knew we had we knew we had a really good player. But it was when we got her in our gym as a freshman and we thought we might redshirt her. And then we watched her for about 2 days. We weren't going to be redshirt.
No way.
She had a bazooka for an arm and she was fast off the floor. And she had a desire to compete. And so we just really hit a home run, obviously with Drews. And it was funny because she was never a first team All-American at Purdue. And which surprised me, especially.
Me too.
Her last 2 years, she was the second leading attacker in the Big Ten. As a junior and a senior, she was the second leading attacker in the Big Ten and made second team All-America. Wow. But that sometimes goes along with how much success your team has, and we weren't getting past the second round at that time because we ran into some good people, and we just weren't good enough. But she was one of those players that we felt like, okay, Annie Drews would be a great fit for us. And she worked out pretty well. But we do that consistently. We brought in 3 freshmen a year ago that I just knew they were great athletes. And we just know we're going to make great players out of them. And that's just what we do. We just feel like we have the ability, because of the culture that we have and the emphasis that we put in to teaching and training and developing talent and doing it again the next day and the next day and the next day. We wish we had more time in the gym because we feel like that's an advantage for our staff and our culture. And then you find players that want to be coached. Not every player wants to be coached, but we find players that want to be coached. And sometimes you find one that really doesn't get that part of it, but you surround them with 15 other players that do want to be coached, and they're going to buy into that. And so I just think that we train ball control. I mentioned that already before, but I think that's a Ball State tendency, is that we're going to be better defensively and we're going to pass the ball better. We're not going to be too complicated with what we do here at Purdue. We have some defensive schemes that we do that can kind of become complicated, but not until they're ready. And that's why with my team, I like to work with our setter. Okay, I think myself and John both spend a lot of time with our setters, but you can't be the head coach and not have direct relationship daily with your setter. I'm not the offensive coordinator on my team. John is. I'm the defensive coordinator, but I got to have an idea what's going on through my setter's mind. Okay, because there's nothing more important on your team. So every day I work with our setter. During the training, John works with passers.
Within those trainings, Muncie and basically upstate Indiana and Purdue University specifically, it's known for more preference towards block training in comparison to random. Like, you like to mix up block and random, but the element of block, the perception is that you really like it because of skill development. Can you talk about it? Because Marcelo Mendez, who coaches Sada Cruzeiro, one of the best clubs, professional clubs in the world, believes in the same thing. And there's some great other coaches in America that believe in the same thing. But I want to know, why is this so important to you? Why you believe in training in a block matter in order to work on skill development?
I just think that's the best way for learning. I think that's where you start every day, is with fundamentals. And so we're going to train technique. It's the hardest skill in the game to learn. It's the one skill you train a player for 3.5 years and they finally get it as a senior, and then they're gone. But it is. I mean, there are some natural blockers. We've had a handful of great natural blockers that have come in, but it's such a difficult skill to learn because there's.
Well, I'm sorry, Dave. Let me interrupt you. What I meant was, to clarify myself, what I meant was, like, in a block matter, meaning like more controlled type of drills that would increase the amount of repetition in serve receive, in defense, blocking. But those control environments, there's a lot of repetition. At least the feedback outside of your gym is that, and I want to know, is inside of your gym is that way?
Yeah, it is. It is. And the reason it is because it's such a tough skill. And we need to spend time on it. It's like passing. Passing is the most important. I mean, aside from serving, passing is such a crucial skill. I don't think there's a program in America that passes more balls in practice than Purdue.
Give me an example of that. Like, what do you mean by that?
Our passers, anybody that's a passer on our team, whether it's a defensive player, libero, or the outside hitters, okay, pin hitters, if they're ever going to be a passer in our gym, they're coming in 45 minutes before everybody else, okay? And we're breakdown passing with those passers. And then we get into practice and we're passing some more, okay? But I really believe that John's the guy that does our pass training. And I stay out of his way. There's a lot of things when you have an associate coach that's been with you for 18 years,
wow,
and you want to keep that guy here or that woman here, you give them ownership of what they're doing. And there's a lot of things that I put John in charge of that I don't always necessarily believe in, but I'm going to let him go. I'm going to let him do his thing because I have that kind of confidence in him until it becomes a problem.
How do you deal with that, Dave? Like, you don't believe in something that necessarily that your assistant coach is doing. How do you deal with that as a head coach to allow that freedom? Like, unto what point then you say, hey, you know what? We're not going to continue to do this matter.
let me just clarify that maybe that's not the way that I would teach it. Okay, maybe that's not the way that I think that I've learned is the best fashion.
Right.
Well,
right.
I got a young buck coming in that is all he does, all my brother John does all day long is watch video, whether it be, I'm not going to throw a bunch of names out there, but he watches training tools and videos on TV and comes up with ideas, and he talks to a lot of people. He's in an era right now where there's a lot of coaches his age that are really into what's going to be the best way to pass. Are we passing outside of our body? Are we passing inside of our body? Are we angle passing? What are we doing? Okay. But he is as good as anybody in the college game at teaching passing, in my opinion. And I think that we're going to be one of the best. I think our passing numbers last year were first or second in the Big Ten. And we have them all back. So I think we're going to be off the good this year.
A big tendency that I have seen, Dave, throughout the years is that at least in video, it seemed like maybe 3-4 years ago, you were emphasizing on taking everything on, or trying to take everything on the midline or inside of your body. Your team in video seems like now you're trying to emphasize more on passing off your midline. Always the unbelievable contact type of teaching that you have, and everyone in your family. But now I have seen that tendency more often than in the past. Is this something that we're accurate about, or what are some things that you have changed throughout the years in that concept of serve receive that you have always been so good at teaching?
Yeah, we're not passing anything right now on the midline. We're passing off the hip. We just feel like that gives us a better look at the ball, okay, and a better angle. And we're working hard at drop stepping a lot, so you're not getting beat on that ball that's at your chest. These are all the little drills that we do every day. Okay, there's a lot of footwork involved in it. There's just a lot of contact, but there's a sequence that John has come up with where we break it down every day. And they actually start on a box. We do a lot of box passing where they're sitting on the edge of the box, working all those positions. Okay, passing and holding here. Okay, opening the shoulder up here and passing. Then doing it this way. Ball coming from this angle. Ball coming from the different angles. And again, I stay out of his way on that. I let him do that. That's when I'm over working with the setter, okay? And he's working with our passers. But like I say, a lot of different ways to skin a cat. But as I watch the teams in our league, you see a lot of that in our league.
Well, and the other thing that I have noticed, Dave, on your teams is that the simplicity of your defense as well right now. I don't know, like it's not necessarily different. It has evolved the way that you are approaching at least the system, the formation and the format that the defensive players are going after the ball is similar. But I think that throughout the years, it has gone through less movement before and during contact, more reading. I don't know. This is the way that it looks from the distance. Is this an emphasis that you're putting now on your team? Like, tell me a little bit of that.
I love defense. I just love to watch teams play defense and learn and work with our team on defense, because there's no reason why you shouldn't be good defensively. But it kind of goes back to blocking. Obviously serving is where it starts. If you're a novice of the game, serving is the first part of defense. You've got to serve the ball to a point where it's difficult for the opponent to do what they want to do. So that's where it starts. And then it's your blockers. But I like to limit the movement of everybody defensively. I don't like any kind of defense where you're making somebody move more than 5 feet to get where they have to go to be set before the ball's hit. And the other thing is we teach that we're absolutely set on contact. And even though we teach that, it's almost like a natural phenomenon that nobody's ever set when the ball's hit. There's always going to be some unnecessary movement. But we want our players to be set in a cat-like ready position to play defense whenever the ball is contacted. And we harp on that all the time. We break it down on tape over and over and over again. And there's players that think that they're set and ready when the ball is contacted by the opponent's attacker, and they're not. But they know that they are, but they're not. And so I think It's a
Dave,
great.
look at this movement. Of course, this is in your, or in, this is something that you see every day with your own team. But even when she made a small reading mistake in the beginning, how quick of a good load and a good crossover your blockers get on that play. And the other thing is that split step. Sometimes we only rely on just making a simple crossover or teaching our players to just do a simple crossover. But the reality of the game make us do different things according to who we are. Like, look at that split step up the middle, trying to get there, getting a split step, trying to create more power to generate, to try to get in close. Like, where do you stand on that, Dave? Do you like your blockers closing or reaching low and in, whatever they get to?
Yeah, I don't want them to try to reach for the ball if there's a hole. Okay, I would prefer that they're going straight over and let the middle back dig that hole in the block. Otherwise, they're just going to confuse everybody. But those are two sophomores that are blocking right there. It's Grace Cleveland on the right side and JL Johnson, who's the middle. And for JL to get out there and get a touch on that ball or be in a position to get a touch is pretty good, because Michigan State ran a ball behind the setter. They had the middle
fast. Yeah, and then for a really good goal. With a good slide. So that was a really good closing in that play. Not an easy play. Look at that. It's a flat set, antenna height, and she was still able to get to that ball. Even making her first step to the left, she still was able to get to that ball. That tells me a lot about how much you work on movement on your gym. How do you do this in relation to the strength and conditioning coach, Dave? What's your plan on this? Like, when you want to create a team that you emphasize so much on good, efficient movements and fundamentals, what is the type of plan that you develop with your strength coach as well?
Well, we would like for our strength coach to be working on all kinds of defensive movements and offensive movements with our people. These are moves that when we can't have a volleyball with them and we can't even be doing anything volleyball with any of our staff, they can be doing these movements, in the gym. And there's some defensive moves from our backcourt people that we can work on where they're covering ground, where they're driving through balls without a ball, of course. And then they can be doing these kind of moves right here as well, where they're practicing whether it's going to be just a shuffle and block, or whether it's going to be a crossover and block, or whether it's going to be even 3 steps to go out and block. So that they need to be doing all of that, whether it's with bands, resistance bands, or without resistance bands. But we have a brand new strength coach this year. That's awesome. She was at Santa Barbara, University of Santa Barbara last year. And she's going to be really, really good for us. But those are things that we have talked with her about moving forward.
The last thing I want to mention about this video is that, the importance of working on explosive power with volleyball players. I want people to look at the right side, of course, far side of the camera, look at the right front, and look at the left step that Dave player takes to the wing. Look how big of a step she takes to trap the player. That requires a lot of explosive power. And if she's still a sophomore, she's going to continue to improve on that. So, thank you for sharing those insights. And then, you were talking about how important for you serving is. What are some things that you do in your gym that we can learn from to emphasize on serving? Because sometimes it's a close skill. So how do we make it in a way that players understand the importance of it, that they don't get bored about it, and that we do not get so repetitive in a bad way?
That's $1 million question. It does get repetitive, and you just have to continually remind your players it's the most important skill in the game, and that you're only going to have 6 players on your team serving. And if you want to play all 6 rotations as an outside hitter, you better be a really good server. If you want to be the middle blocker that's going to stay in the game a little bit longer, you better be a really good server. And if you want to win one of those, every team in our league has got about 7 or 8 defensive specialists. They have a long list of them on the bench. And so the way you get on is you be a better server than maybe the other people on your team. 2 years ago, we found that the teams that were causing us the most trouble were the teams that were jump float serving and contacting the ball well in front of the service line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Less
The ball was getting on the passers quicker, and that was causing us some trouble. So last spring, not this spring, but the previous spring, then we went and spent a lot of time on helping our players understand that purpose. So we gave them something different to think about. And then all of a sudden, I think that improved their focus. And most of them were jump floating, but some were contacting the ball 3 feet before the end line, as opposed to contacting the ball 2 feet on the other side of the end line. Mm-hmm. So we put a line down. We put a line down about 3 feet inside the end line, and so they needed to be landing near that line, so that way they knew that they were contacting the ball out in front better.
That's perfect. Just a simple visual for them to understand. This is where I need to finish.
Yeah. And obviously, we do different things. We put targets out certain different ways where we're trying to move it around. We don't have them serve the same area. We never just say go back and serve. Okay, mm-hmm. We're always serving a certain area on the court. I think it's an advantage if you have different kind of servers. I mean, if I'm going to play against your team at Eastern Illinois, and I'm serving the ball the same way every time, you're going to get into a rhythm eventually against that kind of a serve. So we like to have a long ball server. What I mean by that is somebody that's going to serve from 15 feet off the floor. That could be a really dangerous serve. It would be great to have a jump topspin server if you've got somebody that can bring enough heat. If you can't find anybody bringing the heat, you're wasting your time with the jump topspin server at the Division I level, because that's a can of corn. That's just too easy to pass. But
you have just taken us to school on serving, and for everyone watching out there, serving, it's so important in modern volleyball. So important. The higher the level, even more. Because what? Because side out is the number one correlational matter in winning. So that's why you want to keep setters off the net, make it predictable. That's why reading has become so definite into what we do every single day as coaches, because of what Coach Shondell is saying. Please continue, Coach.
Well, and the other thing is that a lot of Division I schools don't do nearly as often as I think they should, and that's serve the short.
Yes.
Yes. It can disrupt so many things. I was watching on the Big Ten Network last night. They had a Big Ten volleyball bonanza last night. So it was just all day was Big Ten volleyball.
Nice.
I was watching Nebraska play against Wisconsin from, I think, 3 years ago. And Cook changed the game against Wisconsin in a rotation when I think Tiana Williams, the middle for Wisconsin, was up front, and Haggerty, as a sophomore, was up front with the setter, Carlini.
Mm-hmm.
All he did was serve the 4 zone 6 times in a row, and he changed the game. Because first time it was, Williams, actually it may have been Haley Nelson that was in the middle. She passed it over the net. It's an overpass, okay, for a kill. And then they get her out of the way and they start passing with Haggerty, but then she can't get out and get a good approach. And it's still disrupting the middle going behind, and they had no backcourt attack.
Mm-hmm.
So just that short serve created exactly, in that case, what Nebraska wanted. And they got 6 points in a row. And they went from being down 14-10 to being ahead 16-14, and they went on to win that game. So the short serve done well is as effective as any serve possible.
Ironically, one of the best serving teams I have seen is Wisconsin now, where even in the final game of this past year, they did an amazing job dominating in that aspect. They got Stanford to be out of system on most of the game, but the arm power and in some more aspects were definitely influential into the result of the game. But then the last question about serving. One of the things that your team does better than anyone, in my opinion, this is Manolo's opinion, is developing a great slide hitter. Even when maybe our teams have amazing hitters per se, the tempo, the timing, okay, the connection between setter and hitter for me are up the charts. What are some key elements that you can do? Number one, as a server to eliminate that action, and maybe you don't want to talk about it. And then on the other side, how much you work on that, because it seems like a really important matter in your offense, coach.
Well, I think if you're trying to prevent the slide offense, you serve short and make the middle pass the ball, because not all middles can overhead or forearm that serve and then get in rhythm and get the ball. And often setters automatically won't give the ball to the middle if they pass the ball. When you scout opponents, you're going to find some opponents that the setter won't give them the ball if they pass. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do is you can serve the ball into that slide hitting area. So you're talking about serving the 2 zone. And if you serve the 2 zone, it congests the area in which that middle wants to come. Maybe the right back passer coming out of the 1 zone has to come all the way up and pass that ball, and now they're in the way. We ran into this problem. Who were we playing? Ohio State this year. We were trying to get the ball to probably Blake Muller, our middle, and they started serving. We had a huge lead. First time we ever played in that beautiful facility over at Ohio State.
Amazing, yes.
And we won the first. I think we won the first set and pretty easily. And we're up in the second set. I'm thinking this is going to be easy. And they start serving that short ball, and because our passer had to come up and was just constantly in the way, we couldn't get the ball to middle. We had a freshman hitting on the outside, and we couldn't put balls away. And all of a sudden, it just started rolling. And so there are definitely some things you can do to slow down a slide offense. The other thing you can do from a defensive standpoint is, and we do something that a lot of teams in America don't do. Gold Medal Square does not even consider release blocking. Okay. And I'm a big believer in stopping what your opponent does well. Okay. If they've got Dana Rettke, and Sheffield knows this, I'm not telling anybody that they don't know. If they've got Dana Rettke, we're going to try to take her out of the game. Okay. That means we're going to serve areas where it's hard to get her the ball. But if they got a good pass and they're running the slide, we're going to have 2 blockers on it. You understand what I'm saying? And I hope they're going to be.
You're gonna go sooner to the option, basically.
We're going to release with that person. Maybe they're going to hold on the setter a little bit, because we can't give the setter wide open if he's front row and be 1-on-1 with the left side hitter. But we're just not going to let Rettke, who's the most dominant player, in my opinion, right now, going into next year in the country, hit 1-on-1 against our left side hit block. We're just not going to do that. We're going to make them. It's the same thing when I coach basketball. We're going to try to do, force somebody else to beat you. Don't let Rettke beat you.
Yeah, not the biggest probability happening on the other side.
Plummer beat you. When you play Penn State next year, are you going to let their 2 middles beat you? You're going to make someone else have to beat you. With Penn State, with Nebraska, their left side hitters were their strength, I thought, last year. So, that sometimes we're going to read, sometimes we're going to release. In the 2-hitter rotations, the 5-1 rotations, I like to release block if we need to. If we're playing a team that has just such a great left or a great middle, we're gonna put 2 people on them.
How do you relate that to your players, coach? Like, how early during the week you're already talking about this matters? Do you hand them the scouting report early during the week? And then what are some of the things that they have in that piece of information that you give them about the opponent?
Well, release blocking is like any other type of blocking. It has to be taught. Okay. And so we make shuffle moves. We make just a shuffle move in the direction we're going, and then we're still ready to go both directions. We still want them to try to get back. Let's say they're going to go with the slide hitter. They make the shuffle move, but when the ball goes to left side hitter, we still want them to go out and try to help. But these are things that you teach. They understand the theory behind what we're doing. And so they know they may shuffle left, they may shuffle right in these release blocking situations. So you don't have to really, I mean, yeah, you'll when you watch the scouting report, you'll start to talk to them about this is what we're going to probably do in this rotation. Because what people don't understand is there's like so many different matchups in a game that each rotation is never the same. You just don't go into, okay, we're going to do this against Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Every matchup is going to be different. If they swing their dial, we may have different matchups, and so you're going to be doing something different all the time. So I give signals from the bench sometimes to our players if we're going to release block. Okay. I've got signals behind my notebook that says, okay, are we going to read? Are we going to release to the left side? Are we going to release to the slide hitter? Okay. So they look to me, and so I need to know what our servers are going to do. So Juan does our serving zone. So I talked to him about, okay, what are we doing with the serve? Because if we're going to serve into that slide area, I don't want to release to that slide area. Okay, unless it's Recky. Everybody
just camp there.
You get three people out there, but
but and what type of content that scouting report has for Purdue volleyball?
Well, we decided in the last couple of years that our team has to be a player-led team, not a coach-led team.
Mm-hmm.
If you look around the teams that are successful in America, there's not a coach telling the players what to do all the time. There's players telling each other what to do. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I think that's about culture, and that's something that every coach needs to be pushing their team to. Whether you're still going to be heavily involved or not, but they have to be a player-led team. And it takes certain players to do that. But we have that group right now. We have those kind of players right now that will take over our team, okay, to a point that our coaches don't even have to walk in the gym. Okay? And they're gonna run a practice, and they're gonna get stuff done. Or if we don't show up for a match, I still think our players would make it happen. We've got the quirky leadership that would make that happen. But we start out when we come in on Mondays. We have a lot of players come in and work and train hard that did not play the weekend before.
Okay.
As you know, in Division I volleyball, you're going to have players that need Monday off. You're playing in the Big Ten. Blake Moeller, who was an All-American Middle for us, graduated last year, had different injuries. Okay. Caitlin Newton swings at a ton of balls. We're giving those guys Monday off. So the young players who didn't play at all, or some of the people that didn't play well, and of course our passers and our setters, we're going to bring them in and train them. So we don't watch a lot of video on Monday. It's basically a lot of fundamental work and so forth. Tuesday and Wednesday are big video days for us. Tuesday, we want to get the ball rolling. The thing we would do on Monday would be we would watch ourselves from
that past weekend. Do you show them both matches, or you show them the last one? How do you handle it?
I show them whatever I feel like. If I feel like there's areas that we did really well that I want to show them, or if I more likely are things that we didn't do well enough, and we're going to focus on this week in practice, then I'll show some of those things to make sure that we know what our focus is going to be on the upcoming week. And then on Tuesday, we'll come in with our scouting report, and we'll talk through the personnel, who their players are, and I give them my feelings on what to expect from those players. And as I'm talking to them about those players, we're going through their video. Okay. If it's an attacker, obviously we're going through their attacking. If it's a setter, we're going through setting dumps. If it's a backcourt player, we're going, watching them pass and defend. So we're going through those things with each of those players. And after we go through their personnel, then we go through serve receive. We'll break down every serve receive pattern. And by that point in time, I've watched their last 5 or 6 matches, and I've got a pretty good idea. Plus the fact that I know, if they've been around the Big Ten, you know who they are. And so I think those meetings are really important, and it's your job to help your players understand them as well as you do. And then because we have volumetrics and every player has access to that, you have to motivate and encourage them to get on volumetrics themselves to help themselves prepare better. whether you're a blocker or you're a hitter or you're a setter or you're a passer, you've got to be better prepared for your opponent than they are for you.
How long do you take on those meetings that you have, showing the serve receive breakdown, showing all other tendencies? Like, how long would those meetings be? Around what?
If we get to 35 minutes, we've gone too long.
Okay.
That's a lot to do in 35 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to lose people if you go longer than that. Okay. And so that's why we also bring people in, and we know there's a 20-hour week. We understand that, but we'll bring our middle blockers in one-on-one. We'll bring our setters in one-on-one. We'll bring our passers in one-on-one, to make sure that they get it. Our right side blocker, I think it's really important that they know what they're getting into when they're going to be playing against, Wisconsin, who's got Haggerty and Loberg. They better know what they're getting into against those people, or Nebraska. They have to understand what we're going to try to accomplish against them from a blocking standpoint.
Then, Coach, at times travel seems awkward in that hotel time. In a normal situation, what do you do? Like, when you get to a place, you're gonna play at night. Let's say you sleep in the hotel. How does your morning looks like for your for your players, and then during the day? Are you training that same day? Are you not? What do you have them doing before the match?
Well, our classic example, a regular Big Ten week, is you're going to play Friday, Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it used to always be. Now it's a lot more Wednesday, Saturday, Friday, Sunday. But let's just say Friday, Saturday is our schedule. We're going to play Ohio State, and then we're going to play Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
That's our deal. So Friday after practice, we normally practice here, although there are some places we like to try to get in the gym on a Friday night. On a Thursday. Thursday night we practice, usually here. But sometimes we'll try to practice once we get to the facility, if they'll accommodate us. Some places can do it, some places can't. But if we practice here, we get done about 4:15. And normally our charter flight goes out at 5. Okay. We have an airport on campus, so that's a real advantage.
Oh, wow.
We have our own airport because we have a great aviation school at Purdue. So we just have to be over at our airport, show the ID, get on the jet. We're in Columbus in about 30 minutes. That's one of the shortest flights. But we get to Ohio State. We'll normally eat dinner on the way to the hotel. We'll get our dinner, go to the hotel, check in. I normally don't need them that night for film or anything else. We let them kind of do some studying. If they just want to watch TV, whatever they want to do, we give them that night just to relax. They've already had a little bit of a practice with us, and they've had the flight and the meal. So we let them do their own thing. We wake up the next day, and even in the hotel, sometimes we'll work with our setters or our passers somewhere in the hotel, whether it's just setters setting off of a chair, passers passing off of a box or something like that, just to get some reps with them. We'll have our breakfast together. Then we will meet for our final video session before practice. And then we go to practice. And then we come back, have our pregame meal. We might watch more video, but I think sometimes you can watch way too much video, especially on game day. I think you can blow some minds by doing that. Definitely.
It's a hard schedule, by itself. So you try to just keep them fresh during that day, then, Coach.
Yeah, we're a big believer of keeping our legs fresh.
Okay.
When we practice, when we go to Ohio State on that, if we're playing on Friday, we practice on Friday. We're going to keep certain people fresh. We're not going to have them jumping and competing and doing everything during that practice, because we're going to need them when it counts that night. And it's funny because I know how long teams practice when they come to Purdue, because I know
their schedules.
And some of them just go like crazy in there. And some of them have been really successful programs that go like crazy. But again, it's just one of those, you have to believe in what you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And we just feel like playing 2 matches a weekend, you have to be careful on how many jumps your people get. Okay. You have to stay fresh.
Speaking of that, like what are some of the things that you want to leave in Purdue University after your time? You know, how does Purdue want them to look like when that happens? What are your biggest things that you want to leave a legacy on?
I think being a program of great integrity at a time when there are some volleyball programs that are trying to kind of match basketball and football.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why we want to do that. We have such a great thing in the sport of volleyball, women's volleyball, that when you get a commitment from somebody, you know that person is going to come to your school. But I think we're getting to a point now where not everybody knows if that kid is going to come to your school, because there's people out there that are trying to recruit, and that goes on all the time in some other sports. Okay, but it hasn't gone on in our sport.
But it's so bad. It's so bad, and it's it's an epidemic where, and now with the portal, it's just like a free agency thing going on in the States.
And the portal is a different story to some extent. Although I think some of those people have already been picked up before their name even goes on the portal, if that makes any sense to you at all. But that's the life. That's the life that we're living right now. Okay, I mean that's just the way that it is.
It's true. It's true.
But I just want our program that people understand that we don't cheat at Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
It's not happening at Purdue. We're playing by the rules, and we take great pride in that. And you're not going to hear about Purdue pulling any shenanigans. Now, have we lost the teams that have? Yeah, we have. Okay, but that's okay. We got to work harder. We have to do things harder. But and I just think that a first class program that the fans loved, the community embraced, and I think it can last for a long time here at Purdue. And I'm not planning on going anywhere too soon, Manolo.
Of course not, man. You have a long way to go there, but I'm wondering about that legacy that, not just you, but your family, everywhere they have been, there's been a really stable legacy about how the program was and how it became, when they left.
When I came to Purdue, one of my goals that I really didn't share with a lot of people is I wanted Purdue to become the Ball State of women's volleyball. And what I mean by that is I don't believe that to have one of the elite programs in the country, one of the best programs in the country for your athletes, that you have to win a national championship. Don't get me wrong. We're trying to win national championships. We're doing everything we can to compete with the best of the best. But I don't think that's at the end of the day, that's what determines the experience that your players have in your program. I just don't believe that. I'll never believe that. Even if we win national championships, I'm not going to change that philosophy. It's how much do they enjoy what they're doing? How much do they grow? Have they become better leaders? Have they become better people? Are they better prepared to go out into the world because they were in your program? And there's a lot of great programs out there. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that we have the answer for everything. We don't. Nobody does. But we don't lose. We've had 5 players transfer in 17 years.
Wow.
5 scholarship players transfer. So there's a loyalty about Purdue.
Dave, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. That's a huge deal. Nice job, man. And
again, I'm not saying people shouldn't transfer. I'm not saying that. Okay. But I think that, if you have a culture and you recruit people that get it and their families get it, and that's hard to do, as you know, because you don't know everything about the people that you're recruiting, especially their parents. Okay. But players that can be patient and know that their time is coming at a program like Purdue to get a degree like you get at Purdue is valuable. And everybody wants to play, when they're young. But you hope that you can develop that relationship again that they trust you. That, like, we'll have a situation next year. We'll have 3 sophomores and a senior as our pin hitters. Caitlin Newton will be an All-American next year. She's down at Terre Haute South. Do you remember Caitlin?
Yes, sir.
She hits the ball harder than anybody I've ever coached, and she's just turned herself into a great player.
She's going to be another Annie Drews.
And then we have 3 rising sophomores. Okay, one of which all 3 fought for the same spot last year, our L2 position. Okay, and they all got a chance to play, and it was great because I threw them in some situations that were pretty tough. Now, one of them most likely will start in the L2. One's going to be in the opposite, and then the other one's going to be a backup L2, backup opposite. But they're going to have an opportunity. All 3 as sophomores are going to be real integral parts. But if you look at it like, wait a minute, I'm not starting. I don't get to start.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got a problem. Then you've recruited the wrong person.
How long before they know that? You actually believe in sitting with them in the spring and say, hey, it's more likely that you're not going to start because I'm bringing such and such, or because I have these plans, or how do you approach this?
I don't think you want to squelch their opportunity at that point in time. Because I don't know right now. Like I said, I don't know who's going to fill those spots. I know I got 3 of them. Okay, and I think it will be more of a revolving door with those people, and I'm okay with that. I think it's going to take all 3 of them to fill those 2 spots. Maybe even on a particular night, it might take all 3 of them. But I just think you have to have a relation, and you have to be willing to have the conversation with them. There are some coaches that don't want to have the conversation. I have no problem having that conversation with the players. Okay, it's not a bad conversation. You got a great opportunity. You're either going to be the L2, you're going to be the opposite, okay, or you're going to be the backup for both spots. You're going to decide who it's going to be. I'm not going to make the decision. You'll decide if you're going to be one of those 2 that are going to start, or if you're going to be the one coming off the bench.
How do I earn a spot in your gym?
Well, you're going to play really hard. You're going to compete. You're going to be coachable, and you're going to make progress. You're going to develop, and you're not going to question who you are. And you can't lack that confidence and play in the Big Ten. People, they're going to smell that. They're going to smell that from across the net. Okay. And so, you have to have great confidence and great toughness and great belief in who you are. You got to come in the gym every day and compete, and you've got to be a great teammate. We started really focusing on the value of being a great teammate over anything else 2 years ago, because I felt like we didn't reach our potential as a team because we had people who thought more about themselves than they did about the team.
Yes, sir.
It wasn't blatant, but it was enough that we didn't get where we wanted to go. And so now we do a lot of things. I don't know if you've read any books by John Gordon. John Gordon writes great books. And yeah, there you go. I couldn't see those back here, brother. But we read those books. We read those books as a program. And that just helps our people understand it's not about you. Okay, it's about us.
What's the last one, Dave? The last time you have your team read.
Oh, the last probably, I can't think of the name of it, but it's Positivity Coaching from John Gordon. But all that list of books, they're in the Players Lounge right now. Okay. So they can get them and read them. I don't know how much they're reading them because they're hearing about John Gordon a lot from me. But he's been an inspiration to me.
Coach, I have 2 more questions.
Sure.
If Mr. Shondell will be watching this program right now, what will be something that you want him knowing, that you would like to tell him?
Well, number one, I hope that he continues to fight the good fight, because my dad's 91 and he's having some health issues, but he knows people love him out there. I would want my dad to know that what an inspiration he has been to me and thousands of others out there, and not just who coach and not just who teach, but who just want to be good people. And he's just the epitome of what a father could be. And like I mentioned, I'm here now because of him. I mean, I wouldn't have a job at Purdue if my dad wasn't Don Shondell. And so, and that he will never be forgotten. But I hope he can make it out to some matches next year. He always does. Comes down and sits on the end line at the scorer's table down the end line where the media people sit. And he loves to come in. Sometimes he wears the Ball State warm-up, and we have to give him a hard time about that. I bought him a lot of Purdue warm-ups, but he can't find those.
He still wears his thing? Okay. What's their hardest but very, very, very heartfelt advice that he has given you that you are applying today?
My dad's all about honesty and clean living and doing the right thing. And I can give you experience. It's almost embarrassing, but you talk about a dad that does the right thing. I was 20 years old, and it was after my sophomore year of college. And one of the best things I ever did was play softball. I was a really good softball player. And Muncie, although it was a great volleyball area, it was a hotbed for softball in the state of Indiana. Problem is with softball, sometimes becomes drinking a cold beer or two. And I'm with all these older guys. I was the youngest guy on the team. Okay, they picked me up because they knew I was a pretty good player. And I'm playing in this tournament, and my brother Steve's on the team. Steve was a pitcher. And Steve comes back and tells my dad that I've been drinking during this softball tournament. So on Monday, I'm outdoors scraping windows before we do some painting on our living room windows outdoors. And my dad questions me about that.
Oh, no.
Before I can get a word out, he runs his fist right through my chest. I mean, he hit me as hard as I'd ever been hit in my life. And needless to say, he wasn't happy about that particular story. And so he made his point. He made his point to me very, very clear. But my dad was a man that never drank. Never drunk. He had some very good friends that were killed by drunk drivers.
Wow.
So he was committed to not do that and didn't want me to do that. And I'd kind of let him down. And he said, not a good idea. And, I've recovered, though, physically from it. But, that's just a story about my dad for you.
Thank you for sharing that, Coach. I have one more thing. What are some good places to fish? I am aware that you love fishing. What are some good places to fish in Indiana?
Well, the best places to fish are farm ponds, to be honest with you,
okay,
that have been stocked. And you know that I love to catch bass, largemouth and smallmouth bass.
Wow.
That's what I enjoy catching. And we have some at our Lake Freeman. Mm-hmm. I had my grandsons out there fishing yesterday, and even my 5-year-old grandson, who's my oldest grandchild, caught a smallmouth bass yesterday.
Yes.
So if you're at the right place at the right time, you know, fishing can be a lot of fun, but sometimes it can be just a long time enjoying nature on the water. But really, I think, you know, going to either going up into Canada where you can't lose fishing, or finding those farm ponds that are stocked with bass and bluegill. Those are the places to go.
Coach, any last words of wisdom for people watching?
Well, I just think that, you know, volleyball is at a unique time right now. And I feel for all those club directors and club coaches and club players that lost pretty much 75% of their season. It's very, very tough for them. And we've got clubs that are going out of business, just like we have restaurants going out of business. And so hopefully, people will find a way to fill that void financially and recover. And because the club people are huge for the sport of volleyball. That's the reason that volleyball is blown up. And you and I are lucky, Manolo, because volleyball is exploding in this country, both on the women's side and the men's side.
Yes.
Like nobody's business. And I just heard where the NCAA is considering chopping the NCAA men's tournament from 7 teams back to 4.
Oh, no.
It'd be hard to believe that in a sport, the fastest growing sport for boys in this country, that we would be going backwards. But I am so committed to men's volleyball because, you know, my dad, he started the program at Ball State and did so much to increase knowledge and popularity in men's volleyball. So hopefully that they won't go backwards at this point in time. I realize that it's a unique year, but 7 teams. I mean, we have 64 for women, and
That's
they can't
insane.
7 for men. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
No, and actually, Al Skates was talking about this, how he was able to help increase the number of teams that went to the tournament. So
Yeah.
I wonder what he thinks now about, this situation going on. I hope that, in a way, we do not use what's going on to then take advantage of that to cut sports, especially men's volleyball. And so many programs have been affected, like you said already, because of this situation. But hopefully, athletic departments are not using this moment as an excuse to then get rid of some programs that they were already thinking about doing. But yeah, so hopefully the game keeps growing, and I think it will continue to grow with people like you. And the biggest lesson I take today, Dave, from you is that, first of all, I made a mistake at one point in my career of recruiting talent over anything else, and that cost me. And you saying how much you emphasize on recruiting integrity first and foremost, it's something that, assures me that we must go that direction no matter what. No matter the level, we do not have an excuse, first of all, to not have integrity and character, and second of all, to not recruit integrity and character. Like, that's the number one priority and responsibility that we have as coaches. And if we go to a place that don't have that, to make sure that we help establish that type of culture. And the other thing is you living by example, you making sure that your players know that you are involved, that you believe that they're more than just players. So I'm grateful for this opportunity talking to you today. I'm grateful for the Shondell family for all that he has done for the game of volleyball, for all that he has done for so many coaches, beyond the ones that came from there, because of you guys are an inspiration for all of us to keep going. So thanks so much for this opportunity. Thanks so much for Purdue University for allowing us to talk today. For all those Purdue volleyball fans, please make sure that Dave is coming better than ever when we get back from this situation. And hopefully we get to hang out at some point, Dave, and maybe have some coffee in one of these recruiting tournaments. I know that you are in every single recruiting tournament. You're a really, really hard worker. So I'm sure that I'm going to see you along the way.
Well, hey, thanks so much. I did want to mention that one key, I think, to being successful as a head coach is giving that ownership of responsibility to your staff. And John, who I've talked about, and my other assistant, Kathy Jewell, have been with me now for 18 years. This is our 18th season together. And I think the reason that they are still here is because I let them do what they do really well. And I give them that opportunity, and I empower them, and I don't try to get into their business that much because they've proven that they can do things. And I think I did the same thing when I was a high school coach. We had a lot of coaches on my bench, and we were finding ways some were volunteers, some were getting half as much money as an assistant coach could make, but I let them do stuff. I let them be involved in our program, and now they're all head coaches someplace. They're all doing their thing, and so we've got to continue to bring people in and coach. But I'm so happy that the staff that I have here at Purdue, both our coaching staff and our operations person, and we got great grad assistant getting ready to come in, and a really good volunteer coach, and we've got a really good program, and I'm just thrilled to be at Purdue and thankful for the opportunity.
Longevity and continuity is what I see in your program. Only, that stat right there that you told me a little bit before, 6 players only, moving forward from your program. Yeah. It's unbelievable, especially and unfortunately during this time. So that shows how well you treat people and how well you make sure that people are well treated around you. So thank you so much for that, Coach.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
For everyone watching right now, I'm going to let you know that we're going to have a second guest today. Later this afternoon, I'm going to be talking to Natalia Valentin, who is the Puerto Rico national team setter and captain. She is a professional player, and we'll be talking about her process in recruiting when she was in the NCAA, but also as a professional player and national team. I must say that session is in Spanish. So I invite everyone to come watch us at 5 p.m. today. So please stay safe and healthy, everyone. Thank you so much for the support. Please go and follow and like Volley Junkies.